The 1950s is often remembered as a golden age, a time of classic cars, rock and roll, milkshakes, and suburban neighborhoods. It was the decade when families gathered around the television for the first time, teenagers created a new culture of music and rebellion, and the world stood nervously under the shadow of nuclear war. But behind the polished image of suburban life and sock hops, the 1950s was a decade filled with powerful change. Technology advanced rapidly, global tensions reshaped politics, and new social movements began to challenge old traditions. In this video, we'll explore 5 fascinating facts about the 1950s that reveal how this decade helped shape the modern world. From the birth of rock and roll to the terrifying realities of the Cold War, these moments defined an entire generation. Let's step back in time. In the early 1950s, a musical revolution began. A brand new genre exploded onto the scene and forever changed popular culture. That genre was rock and roll. Before rock and roll, most popular music in America was dominated by traditional pop singers, big band orchestras, and crooners like Frank Sinatra. Music was generally polished, controlled, and aimed at adult audiences. But young people wanted something different. They wanted music that was energetic, rebellious, and exciting. Rock and roll blended several musical styles together, including rhythm and blues, gospel, country, and boogie-woogie piano. The result was a powerful new sound with strong rhythms, electric guitars, and lyrics about youth, love, and freedom. One of the earliest and most influential rock and roll songs was Rocket 88, recorded in 1951. Many historians consider it one of the first true rock records, but the genre truly exploded into mainstream popularity with performers like Elvis Presley. When Elvis appeared on national television in the mid-1950s, audiences were shocked. His energetic dancing and unique singing style captivated young fans, but worried many parents. Some television producers even filmed Elvis only from the waist up because his dancing was considered too provocative for the time. Despite the controversy, rock and roll spread rapidly across the country. Teenagers began buying records in massive numbers. Radio stations dedicated entire programs to the new sound. Record stores suddenly found themselves serving a completely new audience, young people with their own musical tastes. Rock and roll also helped break down racial barriers in music. Many early rock songs were inspired by African American rhythm and blues artists. As the genre became more popular, white audiences were introduced to musical traditions that had previously been segregated. Artists like Chuck Berry, Little Richard, and Fats Domino became major influences on the growing rock movement. Their music laid the foundation for future generations of artists, from the Beatles and the Rolling Stones to modern rock musicians today. By the end of the 1950s, rock and roll had transformed the music industry. It gave teenagers their own cultural identity and became one of the most powerful forces in entertainment history. While music and culture were changing rapidly, the world was also experiencing a period of extreme political tension. The 1950s was one of the most intense periods of the Cold War. The Cold War was a global rivalry between two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. Although the two countries never fought each other directly, they competed for global influence through politics, military power, and technological development. One of the most frightening aspects of the Cold War was the development of nuclear weapons. Both nations possessed atomic bombs powerful enough to destroy entire cities. As the arms race intensified, people around the world lived with the constant fear that a nuclear war could break out at any moment. Governments prepared their citizens for the possibility of nuclear attack. In American schools, children practiced duck and cover drills. Students were taught to hide under their desks and cover their heads if they saw the flash of a nuclear explosion. While these drills offered limited protection, they were meant to give people a sense of preparedness. Many families also built fallout shelters in their backyards or basements. These shelters were designed to protect people from radioactive fallout after a nuclear explosion. Some shelters were stocked with food, water, medical supplies, and emergency radios. At the same time, the United States and the Soviet Union conducted numerous nuclear tests. Some tests were so powerful that they could be seen hundreds of miles away. The fear of nuclear war influenced nearly every aspect of life during the 1950s. Movies, books, and television shows often featured stories about nuclear disasters or post-apocalyptic worlds. Science fiction films about giant monsters and alien invasions were often metaphors for the anxiety people felt about nuclear weapons and global conflict. Despite these fears, the Cold War also led to significant scientific and technological advancements. The competition between superpowers pushed governments to invest heavily in research, space exploration, and military technology. These investments would soon lead to one of the most important technological races in history. Before the 1950s, television was still a relatively new technology. Only a small percentage of households owned a television set. But during the 1950s, television ownership exploded. In 1946, there were fewer than 10,000 televisions in the United States. By 1959, that number had grown to over 50 million. Television quickly became the centerpiece of family entertainment. Instead of listening to the radio or going out to the movies, families gathered in their living rooms to watch evening programs together. Popular shows included comedies, westerns, variety programs, and early game shows. One of the most famous television programs of the decade was I Love Lucy. The show starred Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz and became one of the most successful television sitcoms in history. I Love Lucy introduced many techniques that are still used in television production today, including filming in front of a live studio audience. Another major television trend in the 1950s was the rise of live broadcasts. Many early shows were performed live because recording technology was still developing. This meant actors had to perform entire episodes without mistakes, similar to a stage play. Television also had a huge influence on advertising. Companies quickly realized that television was an incredibly powerful way to reach consumers. Commercials became an important part of the viewing experience, promoting everything from household appliances to breakfast cereals. Children's programming also became extremely popular. Shows featuring cartoons, puppets, and adventure stories attracted young audiences and helped establish Saturday morning cartoons as a long-lasting tradition. Television also helped shape American culture by spreading trends, fashion, and slang across the country. People in different cities and states began watching the same shows and sharing the same cultural experiences. In many ways, television helped create a unified national culture. By the end of the 1950s, it had become one of the most influential forms of media in the world. After World War II ended in 1945, millions of American soldiers returned home. Many of them were ready to start families and build new lives. This led to one of the biggest population booms in history, known as the baby boom. Between 1946 and 1964, millions of babies were born in the United States. With so many young families, there was a massive demand for housing. This demand led to the rapid expansion of suburban communities. Suburbs are residential areas located outside major cities. Developers began building entire neighborhoods of affordable homes designed for middle-class families. One of the most famous suburban developments was Levittown, built in New York. Levittown used assembly line construction techniques similar to those used in automobile factories. Houses were built quickly and efficiently, allowing thousands of families to purchase homes at affordable prices. These neighborhoods often included schools, parks, shopping centers, and community spaces. For many families, moving to the suburbs represented the American dream. Life in the suburbs was often portrayed as peaceful and comfortable. Families owned cars, children played outside, and neighbors formed close communities. However, suburban expansion also had social consequences. Many suburbs were racially segregated due to discriminatory housing policies and lending practices. These policies prevented many minority families from purchasing homes in certain neighborhoods. This inequality would later become an important issue during the civil rights movement of the 1960s. Despite these challenges, the growth of suburbs reshaped American society. Cities expanded outward, highways were built to connect communities, and car ownership increased dramatically. The suburban lifestyle became one of the defining images of the 1950s. Although the 1950s is often remembered as a time of prosperity, it was also a decade of growing social change. For many African Americans, life in the United States was still shaped by segregation and discrimination. In many parts of the country, especially in the South, laws known as Jim Crow laws enforced racial segregation in schools, public transportation, restaurants, and other public spaces. But during the 1950s, the civil rights movement began to gain momentum. One of the most important events occurred in 1954 when the United States Supreme Court ruled on the case Brown v. Board of Education. The court declared that racial segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. This decision was a major victory for civil rights activists and challenged the legal foundation of segregation. Another historic moment occurred in 1955 when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. Her arrest sparked the Montgomery bus boycott, a year-long protest against segregated public transportation. During the boycott, African Americans refused to ride city buses. Instead, they organized carpools, walked long distances, and supported each other in their protest. The boycott eventually led to a Supreme Court ruling that segregation on public buses was unconstitutional. The Montgomery bus boycott also brought national attention to a young minister named Martin Luther King Jr. King became one of the most important leaders of the civil rights movement. His philosophy of nonviolent protest inspired millions of people to fight for equality and justice. Throughout the late 1950s, civil rights activism continued to grow. Organizations such as the NAACP worked to challenge segregation through legal action and peaceful protest. Although many struggles still lay ahead, the events of the 1950s laid the foundation for the major civil rights victories of the 1960s. The 1950s was a decade filled with contrasts. It was a time of optimism and prosperity, but also a period of deep global tension and social change. Rock and roll gave young people a powerful new voice. Television transformed entertainment and communication. Suburban neighborhoods reshaped the American landscape. The Cold War created a world shadowed by nuclear fear, and the civil rights movement began challenging long-standing systems of discrimination. Many of the cultural, political, and technological developments that shaped modern society began during this remarkable decade. The legacy of the 1950s can still be seen today, in music, media, politics, and the continuing pursuit of equality. Understanding this decade helps us understand how the modern world came to be. And that's what makes the history of the 1950s so fascinating.